The Empire had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. They had conquered 342 worlds across 3 galaxies. They had crushed species that built cities of crystal and armies of machines. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever come close. Supreme Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was old for his kind, with gray skin and eyes that had seen 100 worlds burn. Behind him, through the massive windows, he could see his armada. 9,700 warships, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. They stretched across space like a metal ocean. "Show me the target," commanded. A blue planet appeared on the screen. It had white clouds and green land and deep oceans. It looked peaceful. It looked weak. "Earth," his advisor said. "Home to 8 billion humans. They have been in space for less than 200 years. Their weapons are primitive. Their ships are slow. They have no planetary shields. No orbital defenses worth mentioning." Made a sound that passed for laughter among his people. This is what the scouts were worried about, this little world. The scouts reported that humans are unusual, the advisor said carefully. They fight among themselves constantly. They have destroyed parts of their own planet. They seem to enjoy conflict. "Then they will understand what comes next," said. "They will know they cannot win. They will surrender and we will add them to the Empire. Simple." The armada moved toward Earth. They came out of hyperspace near the planet's moon, letting the humans see them. Letting the humans understand the size of what they faced. Had done this many times before. Most species surrendered within hours of seeing the fleet. The smart ones anyway. On Earth, everything changed in a single moment. Lieutenant was 26 years old. She had joined the military because she wanted to protect people. She had trained for wars that she hoped would never come. Now she stood in an underground command center, watching her screens fill with red dots. "How many?" her commander asked. "Nearly 10,000 ships," replied. Her voice was steady but her hands were shaking. "They're holding position near the moon." The room was silent. Everyone knew what this meant. Everyone had read the reports from the space telescopes, the warnings that something was coming. But seeing it was different. Seeing it made it real. "We're receiving a transmission," someone called out. "They want to talk." The alien appeared on the main screen, looked at the humans with something like boredom. He had given this speech many times. "People of Earth," he said, "I am Supreme Commander of the Empire. Your world is now part of our territory. You will surrender your governments, your weapons, and your resources. In return, you will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire. You have 1 hour to accept. Resistance will result in the destruction of your major cities. This is not a negotiation." The transmission ended. In the command center, people were crying. Some were praying. Some were already talking about surrender. 8 billion lives against 10,000 warships. The math was simple. The math was hopeless. But the old general in charge, a man named who had spent 40 years preparing for something like this, did not cry. He did not pray. He picked up a phone and called the president. "Sir," he said, "it's time, activate everything." Across the world, in bunkers and bases and hidden facilities, soldiers received the same order. Weapons that had been built in secret were powered on. Plans that had been made decades ago were put into action. Humanity had known, since the first alien signals were detected 70 years ago, that this day might come, and they had prepared. Lieutenant was chosen to deliver humanity's response. She was young, she was calm, and she spoke clearly. The leaders thought she would show the aliens that humans were not afraid. She sat in front of a camera. The whole world watched, the watch too. To the Empire said, "This is Lieutenant of the United Earth Defense Force. We have received your demands." She paused. "We reject them." On the Eternal Dominion leaned forward. This was unexpected. "You have entered restricted space," continued. "You have threatened our people and our world. You have 1 hour to withdraw your forces. There will be no second warning." She ended the transmission. For a long moment the bridge was silent, then began to laugh. His officers joined him. The sound filled the ship. "They threaten us," said. "This little world with their little ships." He turned to his admirals. "Send the first wave. 800 destroyers. Burn their cities. Show them what happens to those who defy the Empire." The destroyers moved forward, dropping toward Earth like falling stars. In the underground command center, General watched them come. He was calm. He had waited his whole life for this moment. "Sir," said, "they're targeting Seoul, Tokyo, Beijing, New York, London, all major cities." Nodded, "Then we stop them." He looked at his officers. "Fire everything." Across the planet, the ground began to open. Hidden doors revealed weapons that no one outside the military had ever seen. Magnetic launchers, each one capable of throwing metal at speeds that seemed impossible. The first destroyer was hit by a tungsten rod traveling at 15 kilometers per second. It did not explode. It simply stopped existing, torn apart by pure force. Then another was hit, and another. On the Eternal Dominion, alarms began to scream. "Commander," an officer shouted, "we're losing ships, dozens of them. Something is hitting them, but we cannot track it." Stared at the screen. His destroyers were dying to a species that should have been helpless. "What is happening?" he whispered. The war for Earth had begun, and they were about to learn that they had made a terrible mistake. The tungsten rods kept coming. They were simple things, just metal shaped like arrows, but they moved so fast that nothing could stop them. Each one hit with the force of a bomb, punching through shields like paper. General watched the battle from his underground command center. Red dots disappeared from his screen one by one. Each dot was a destroyer. Each destroyer held 500 enemy soldiers. 300 destroyed, Captain reported. She was young, only 28, but she had trained for this her whole adult life. "They're trying to retreat." "Don't let them," said. "Keep firing." The magnetic launchers hidden across Earth worked without rest. They had been built over decades, disguised as research facilities and power plants. They never knew they existed. Now they knew. In orbit, the surviving destroyers turned and ran. They had come expecting easy prey. They found death instead. On the Eternal Dominion, Supreme Commander could not believe what he was seeing. His screens showed the wreckage of 600 ships. 600, from a species that should have been helpless. "How?" he demanded. "What weapons are these?" His scientists worked quickly, analyzing the attacks. When they had answers, they looked afraid. "Simple kinetic projectiles," the lead scientist said. "Metal rods accelerated to extreme speeds. No explosives, no advanced technology, just mass and velocity." "That's impossible," one of the admirals said. "Such weapons would require enormous power, enormous precision." "The humans have both," the scientist replied. "They have been preparing for this, for decades, perhaps longer." Stared at Earth through the viewport. The blue planet looked the same as before, peaceful, quiet, but now he knew it was a trap. "They knew we were coming," he said slowly. "They built weapons specifically to destroy us." He turned to his officers. "How?" No one had an answer. On Earth, people were celebrating. The news showed footage of ships burning in the atmosphere. Crowds gathered in streets, cheering, crying with relief. They had won. The monsters from the stars had been beaten. But in the command center, there was no celebration. General knew the truth. "This isn't over," he said to his staff. "We hurt them, we surprised them, but they still have 9,000 ships. They'll come again, and next time they'll be ready." Lieutenant understood. She had studied war. She knew that first battles meant nothing if you couldn't win the war. "What do we do?" she asked. "We prepare," said. "We use the time we've bought, and we pray it's enough." In the days that followed, Earth became a fortress. Every factory switched to making weapons. Every scientist worked on new defenses. People dug tunnels and built shelters. They knew the aliens would return. His younger brother joined the defense force. He was only 22, good with computers and technology. He was assigned to work on electronic warfare, finding ways to disrupt communications. "Are you scared?" asked him one night when they had a rare moment together. "Yes," admitted, "but I'm more scared of doing nothing, of just waiting to die." Nodded, she felt the same way. Supreme Commander spent 2 weeks regrouping. He studied every piece of information about humans. He learned about their history, their wars, their weapons. What he found disturbed him. Humans had been fighting each other for all of their history. They had invented thousands of ways to kill. They had dropped nuclear bombs on their own cities. They had created weapons that could destroy their entire planet. "They are insane," said. "They fight even when there is no reason to fight. They kill even their own kind." "Perhaps we should leave them," one of his admirals suggested. "Find an easier target." Considered this. It would be the smart choice, the safe choice, but the Empire had never retreated from a conquest. To leave now would show weakness. Other conquered worlds might rebel. The Empire could fall apart. "No," decided, "we finish this, but we do it carefully." The second attack was different. No single massive strike. Instead, they used their numbers. They spread across the sky, bombarding Earth from every direction. They could not be hit by the magnetic launchers because they stayed too far away. Earth cities began to burn. General watched helplessly as bombs fell on Seoul. The shields they had built were not strong enough. The bunkers were not deep enough. People died by the millions. "We need to do something," said. Her voice was desperate. "We can't just let them destroy us from orbit." "We're working on it," replied. "But it takes time we don't have." The landed ground troops next. Millions of soldiers in powered armor. They were taller than humans, stronger, better equipped. They took cities one by one. But something strange happened, something they did not expect. The humans did not surrender. Even when their armies were destroyed, civilians fought. Old men with hunting rifles, children throwing rocks, mothers protecting their families with kitchen knives. It was hopeless, but they fought anyway. A captain named led his troops through a burning city. They had killed thousands of defenders. They had destroyed every military target. Victory was complete. Then a bullet hit him in the neck. Fell, choking on his own blood. His soldiers found the shooter, an old man hiding in a destroyed building. He had a rifle that was older than he was. He had been waiting for hours for a clear shot. They killed him, of course, but before he died, the old man smiled. "More will come," he said. "We will never stop." They were learning a terrible lesson. Conquering Earth was possible. Holding it was something else entirely. And somewhere deep underground, human scientists were working on something that would change everything. They called it Project Prometheus. It would take months to complete. The question was whether humanity could survive that long. They controlled the skis. Their ships moved freely, bombing any target they chose. Cities that had stood for centuries became ash and memory. The death count rose past 1 billion, then 2, then stopped being counted at all. General died in the 4th week. A strike collapsed his command bunker. He was giving orders when the ceiling fell. He never stopped talking, never showed fear. His last words were instructions for the counterattack. Captain took his place. She was 31 years old, and suddenly she was responsible for the defense of all of Asia. She did not have time to mourn. She barely had time to sleep. "We're losing," her advisor told her. "Every day we lose more ground, more people." "I know," said, "but we're also making them bleed. Every soldier they lose is one they can't replace. We can replace ours." It was a terrible thing to say, but it was true. Humans could have children. Humans could train new soldiers in weeks. They had traveled across the galaxy. Every soldier they lost was gone forever. The war became personal. It was fought in tunnels and ruins, in forests and mountains. Humans learned to hide, to strike, to disappear. They used traps and ambushes. They turned every building into a fortress. A man named became a legend. He had been a factory worker before the war. Now he led a resistance group in what used to be a coastal city. They had no military training. They had no proper weapons. They had rage and cleverness and nothing left to lose. This group attacked a patrol one night. They used bombs made from factory chemicals. They used knives and metal pipes. The fight lasted 7 minutes. When it ended, 30 soldiers were dead. The survivors captured an officer. He was injured, bleeding from a wound in his side. People wanted to kill him immediately. Wait, said, I want to ask him something. He knelt beside the officer. Why do you keep fighting? The alien asked. Your cities are gone. Your armies are broken. You have already lost. Laughed, it was not a happy sound. You don't understand us, he said. We were killing each other for thousands of years before you came. We invented war. We perfected it. You think you know violence. He leaned closer. You're amateurs. The officer died that night. His body was left where other would find it. A message was written in blood beside him. More will come. Lieutenant, now promoted to commander, coordinated the resistance from a submarine deep in the Pacific Ocean. It was one of the few places that could not easily reach. She spent her days talking to resistance groups across the world, sharing information, planning attacks. Her brother led a special mission. His team captured a communication station, giving humanity access to enemy transmissions for the first time. They're requesting reinforcements, reported, reading the translated messages. Supreme Commander is telling his Emperor that humans are unexpectedly difficult. Difficult, repeated, that's one word for it. The messages revealed something else. They were afraid. Not of losing, not yet, but of how hard the victory was becoming. They had expected to conquer Earth in days. Now months had passed and humans still fought. Some officers wanted to use their most powerful weapons. They could destroy Earth completely, turn it into a dead rock, but refused. The Emperor wants this world, he said. He wants its resources, its people as slaves. If we destroy it, we fail. So the war continued, slow and bloody and endless. Humans adapted. They always did. They learned to live underground, to grow food in darkness, to make medicine from whatever they could find. Communities formed in the ruins, helping each other survive. Children were born during the occupation. They would never know the world before the war. They learned to walk in tunnels and to hide at the first sound of engines. They learned that the sky was dangerous. General received reports every day. Attacks and counterattacks, victories and defeats. She kept a map on her wall, marking every place where humans still fought. The marks covered every continent. How long can we last? One of her officers asked. As long as we need to, said. Project Prometheus is almost ready. When it's done, everything changes. Deep in a mountain, hidden from every sensor, scientists worked without rest. They had spent decades studying crashed alien ships, captured technology, anything that could help them understand the enemy. Now they were building something new, human ships that could match the human weapons that could hurt them. It was impossible work, but they were doing it anyway. The lead scientist was a quiet woman named. She had lost her family in the first attack on Seoul. She did not talk about it. She just worked, hour after hour, day after day. How much longer? Asked during a rare visit. Looked up from her work. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. 3 weeks, she said, maybe 4, then we fly. Nodded. 4 weeks. They just had to survive 4 more weeks. Outside, the world burned, but deep underground, hope was being built piece by piece. Commander sat in the cockpit of her fighter. It was beautiful, this machine that human hands had built from alien dreams. The controls felt natural, like the ship was part of her body. Around her, 49 other pilots waited in their own craft. They were inside a mountain, in a hangar that should not exist. Above them, a door was about to open to the sky. "Prometheus Wing," General's voice came through the radio. "This is Control. The door opens in 30 seconds. Your target is the flagship Eternal Dominion. Hit them hard. Hit them fast. Make them remember this day." Checked her weapons. Missiles based on designs but improved by human engineers. Energy cannons that fired faster than anything the enemy had. Shields that could take hits that would destroy fighters. "Prometheus Wing," she said to her pilots, "stay together. Watch each other's backs and come home alive." The mountain opened. Sunlight poured in, the first real sunlight had seen in months. Then the engines fired, and the fighters shot into the sky like arrows from a bow. They detected them immediately. Alerts screamed across their fleet. This was impossible. Humans did not have spacecraft. Humans were primitives, ground creatures who could barely reach their own moon. Yet here they came, 50 fighters moving faster than anything they had seen from Earth before. Supreme Commander watched from his bridge. For the first time in 6 months, he felt real fear. "Intercept them," he ordered. "Launch all fighters." They had thousands of fighters. They poured from their ships like angry insects, filling the space between the fleet and the approaching humans. Smiled. This was what she had trained for. This was what humanity had dreamed of since they first looked at the stars. "Prometheus Wing," she said, "engage." The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human pilots flew like they had been born in space. They dodged and spun and struck with perfect precision. They had spent their whole lives watching movies about space combat, playing games that simulated it, imagining what it would be like. Now they were living it. His first kill was a fighter that tried to get behind her. She felt it coming somehow, a sense that she could not explain. She rolled her ship, let the enemy pass beneath her, and fired. They exploded in a ball of light. "One down," she said calmly, "on your left." Her wingman was a farmer's son who had learned to fly in crop dusters. He moved his fighter like it was part of his body, avoiding 3 enemies at once while shooting down a 4th. "Thanks, Commander," he said, returning the favor. He fired past ship, destroying a that she had not even seen. The human pilots worked as a team. They covered each other, supported each other, fought as one unit. They fought as individuals, each trying to be the hero. It made all the difference. In 20 minutes, 300 fighters were destroyed. The humans lost 8. On the Eternal Dominion, watched in horror. "How," he whispered, "how are they doing this?" His officers had no answer. They could only watch as the human fighters pushed through the defensive screen and headed straight for the flagship. Saw the massive ship ahead. It was bigger than anything she had imagined, a mountain of metal floating in space. Guns covered every surface. Shields glowed around it like a second skin. "All fighters," she broadcast, "focus on the shield generators. We punch a hole, we go inside, we hit the reactor. Simple plan." "Simple," repeated. "Sure. Just destroy the biggest ship anyone has ever built. Simple." But they did it anyway. The attack was precise and brutal. Human missiles struck the shield generators one after another. The shields flickered, weakened, and finally fell. The fighters dove through the opening, flying through corridors of metal, dodging internal defenses. Fired her last missiles into the reactor core. The explosion was enormous. It tore through the Eternal Dominion like fire through paper. "Pull out," screamed. "Everyone out now." The fighters fled as the flagship died. They emerged from the breaking ship just as it exploded, the blast pushing them forward like leaves in a storm. Escaped in a shuttle. He watched his flagship, the ship he had commanded for 30 years, become a spreading cloud of debris. Around him, the fleet was in chaos. Their commander's ship was gone. Human fighters were everywhere. And now, rising from Earth, came something worse. 200 human warships. They were smaller than ships, built fast from whatever materials could be found. But they carried the same weapons as the fighters. They moved with the same impossible speed. General commanded from the carrier resurrection. She had not slept in 3 days. She did not need to. All ships, she ordered, weapons free. Show them what humanity can do. The battle for orbital space lasted 9 days. 9 days of constant fighting, of ships dying on both sides, of humans and giving everything they had. When it ended, the controlled nothing. Earth was free. The sky belonged to humanity again. Commander's fighter was damaged in the final push. She ejected, floating in space among the debris, watching the retreat. Commander's voice, "I'm coming to get you." "Take your time," said. She was tired, more tired than she had ever been, but she was smiling. They had won. Against all odds, against an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds, humanity had won. But the war was not over. They were running, but they were still alive, and knew that if they escaped, they would return. "General," she said into her radio, "they're heading for the jump point, if they get away." "I know," replied. "We're not letting them go. All ships pursuit course. We end this today." The human fleet turned and followed. They were damaged and tired and running low on everything, but they followed anyway. Because that was what humans did. They never stopped. They never gave up. They fought until the end. And the end was coming. The fleet ran toward the hyperspace jump point beyond Mars. They had come to Earth as conquerors, masters of a 1,000-year empire. Now they fled like animals from a fire. Supreme Commander sat in a borrowed ship, watching his fleet fall apart. Ships that had been damaged in the orbital battle were falling behind. Officers who had once followed him without question were now ignoring his orders, each captain trying to save himself. "How many ships do we have left?" asked. "Just under 3,000, his aide replied. "But many are damaged. Some may not survive the jump." 3,000. He had arrived with nearly 10,000. 7,000 ships lost to a species that had seemed so weak. Behind them, the human fleet pursued. General had gathered every ship that could still fly. 287 vessels, most of them held together by emergency repairs and hope. They should not have been a threat, but had learned to stop underestimating humans. On the carrier resurrection studied the tactical display. Her officers stood around her waiting for orders. They were exhausted. Everyone was exhausted, but no one suggested stopping. "If they reach the jump point, they escape," said. "They go home, they tell their emperor what happened here, and they come back with more ships, more soldiers. Everything we've done will be for nothing." Commander's voice came through the radio. She had been rescued by and was now flying a replacement fighter. "Then we stopped them, all of them." "We're outnumbered 10-1, an officer pointed out. "We were outnumbered worse than that when they arrived," replied. "Look how that turned out." Smiled despite her exhaustion. "Commander is right. We've come too far to stop now. All ships maximum speed. We catch them before they jump." The human fleet accelerated. The engines burned hot, pushing the damaged ships beyond their limits. Some would break down, some would not survive, but they kept going. The saw them coming, had a choice to make. He could turn and fight with his larger force. He could try to destroy the humans once and for all. But his ships were damaged, his crews were demoralized, and he had seen what humans could do. "Continue to the jump point," he ordered. "All ships, defensive formation. Do not engage unless necessary." It was a coward's order. His officers knew it. He knew it, but no one argued. They all wanted to escape. They all wanted to go home. The two fleets met near Mars. The red planet hung in space like a bloody eye, watching as history was made. The humans attacked first. They had no choice. If they waited, they would reach the jump point. So 287 ships threw themselves at 3,000, diving into the enemy formation like wolves among sheep. What followed would later be called the Battle of the Red Threshold. Poets would write about it. Children would learn about it in school. It was the moment when humanity proved that they belonged among the stars. Commander led the fighter wings. She flew into the fleet without hesitation, trusting her pilots to follow. And they did. They always did. "Focus on the engines," she ordered. "A ship that can't move can't escape." The fighters struck engines with precise shots. Warships that had terrorized 100 worlds drifted helplessly, unable to flee. Human ships moved in for the kill, finishing what the fighters started. Coordinated electronic warfare from a captured cruiser. He jammed communications, confused sensors, made the enemy blind and deaf. They could not coordinate. They could not help each other. They could only die. But the humans died too. Ships exploded under enemy fire. Fighters were shot down by the dozens. The price of victory was paid in blood. Fighter was hit while covering his approach on a battleship. His engines failed. He began to drift, helpless. "Commander," he said calmly, "I'm done, get clear." "No," replied. She turned her fighter, heading back toward him. "Don't be stupid, finish the mission." She ignored him. She grabbed his fighter with her ship's emergency tow cable and pulled him away from the battle, to a human ship that could take him aboard. "I told you to leave me," said. "And I told you to come home alive," replied. "We both keep our promises." The battle lasted for hours. Slowly, impossibly, the humans won. They lost 137 ships. They destroyed over 2,800 enemy vessels. When the last ship jumped to hyperspace, only 17 remained of the original 9,700. 17 ships to tell the Emperor what had happened. 17 ships to explain that the greatest fleet in the history of the Empire had been destroyed by a species they had thought was primitive. Supreme Commander was on one of those ships. He would spend the rest of his life trying to explain. He would never succeed. How could anyone believe that humans had done the impossible? On the battlefield, surrounded by debris and death, the surviving human ships gathered. They were broken and exhausted. Many would never fly again, but they had won. General's voice came through every radio on every ship. "This is General to all surviving forces. The enemy is gone. Earth is safe. We won." No one cheered. They were too tired for that. But in ships across the fleet, soldiers and pilots looked at each other and smiled. They had done something that no one thought possible. They had saved their world. 1 year later, Earth sent a message to the stars. General, now chairman of the United Earth Council, spoke for all humanity. To the Empire and to all who would follow them. "We did not ask for this war. We did not seek conflict with the stars. We were content to grow, to learn, to reach outward in peace. You taught us otherwise. You taught us that the universe is cruel, that strength is the only law. We have learned your lesson well." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was cold. "We are humanity. We are the species that hunted animals with sharpened sticks when we were young. We are the species that split the atom and walked on our moon. We are the species that fights, that struggles, that refuses to die. You sent 9,700 vessels to conquer us. 17 returned. Send more. We will be waiting." Commander stood beside her as the transmission ended. She had been promoted to Admiral, the youngest in human history. She had earned it with blood and fire. "Do you think they'll come back?" asked. Looked up at the stars. They seemed different now. No longer mysterious and beautiful. Now they were a challenge, a frontier, a battlefield. "Let them," said. And somewhere across the galaxy, in the throne room of the Emperor, the message was received. The Emperor listened to the human woman speak. He looked at the reports of destroyed ships and dead soldiers. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire knew fear. Because out there in the darkness, on a small blue world, humanity was waiting. And humanity was hungry for the stars.